This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at The Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station, where you can fill up your tank alongside getting medical marijuana products. Check them out over at theatlanticfarms.com. That's theatlanticfarms.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, April 9th, 2021, and you're tuned in to episode 1044 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shea, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Bloomberg has a not great story out of Mexico, where yesterday the bill to legalize adult use marijuana that's been making its way through the nation's Senate appeared to be in danger of being delayed yet again, as Senate Majority Leader Ricardo Monreal told reporters that he thought it would be better to extend the deadline set by the nation's Supreme Court back in 2018 to legalize so as to give lawmakers more time to get the bill right. Senate Majority Leader Monreal said that as it currently stands, the legislation could be deemed unconstitutional and would thus fall to legal challenges after passage. There's also concerns with how the bill handles issues like business licensing and social equity. At his press conference yesterday, the Senate Majority Leader said he'd like to see lawmakers pick back up on legalization work in September. Pop over to Kyle Yeager's story for more here. As we always do, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. Our final top two stories on the day and the week are rather large acquisitions, with Mercer Park Brand Acquisition Corp., a 2-year-old special acquisition company, or SPAC, buying up the California-based vertical operator Glass House Group for $325 million. At the same time, Mercer Park Brand is spending another $219 million to acquire the cultivation company Southern California Greenhouse and $24 million for the retail company Retailer Element 7. The three newly acquired companies will all be rolled up under the corporate umbrella of the Glass House Group. As Marijuana Business Daily puts it, this is a great example of the growing power being flexed by special acquisition companies. Expect to see more deals like this. Rounding out the day's top stories is Canadian marijuana giant Canopy Growth spending $435 million to buy the licensed marijuana provider Supreme Cannabis. Supreme Cannabis has a large operation in Canada and a number of brands within its portfolio, including the popular 7 Acres, Bliss Co., and True Vera. One of the items noted for promotion in the press release announcing this deal was Supreme's hybrid greenhouse facilities, which is probably all the more attractive given the general overbuild of traditional greenhouse space by Canadian providers. You can swing over to New Cannabis Ventures for more on this. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, The Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station, where you can fill up your tank alongside getting medical marijuana products. I've been friends with Ian and the other 3 partners at Atlantic Farms for a few years now, and I've been lucky to have the chance to visit their various production and cultivation facilities, where they grow, produce, and sell top-quality medical cannabis at affordable prices. It's garnered them a hugely successful operation and loyal clientele, but they need some help in pushing everything they have to the next level, because our industry is nothing if not full of opportunity. Ian and his partners have their sights locked into growing into adult use, both here in Maine and in Massachusetts, with facilities and projects at various stages of development. If you've been looking for a good company to get involved with as an investor, then you need to look at Atlantic Farms of Portland, Maine, which you can learn more about over at theatlanticfarms.com. And of course, you can email Ian directly to get that conversation started at ian@theatlanticfarms.com, with Ian spelled I-A-N. That's ian@theatlanticfarms.com. All right, time for the blitz. We have an update out of Connecticut where lawmakers have been working on legislation legalizing adult-use marijuana. Yesterday, Governor Ned Lamont held a press conference during which he was asked about the progress of a bill he's been pushing, setting up adult-use legalization. That bill was actually advanced out of the House Judiciary Committee just on Tuesday, as we covered here on The Daily, and is one of two pieces of legislation in the works throwing off adult-use cannabis prohibition. The other having been approved by the Labor and Public Employees Committee last month. When asked about his bill yesterday, Governor Lamont said that if lawmakers fail to pass legalization this year, the question should go before voters via referendum next year, noting that in other states, legalization ballot measures have usually won by wide margins, even as legislative solutions have won by much slimmer numbers. Activists in Delaware are launching a boycott of 4 medical marijuana companies because those 4 companies testified against proposed adult use legalization bills last month in the state legislature. The 4 companies, Columbia Care, Fresh Delaware, CanTech, and EZY Venture, argued that making adult use legal would oversaturate the cannabis market, which is just stupid. So yeah, this one seems justifiable. For shame, Columbia Care, Fresh Delaware, CanTech, and EZY Ventures. Open up Marijuana Moment for more here. Illinois-based Verano Holdings announced its full year 2020 fiscal results, with yearly revenue growing 196% annually to $355 million, rolling out to gross profits of $224 million, up from just $51 million in 2019. That all flowed out to an adjusted EBITDA of positive $153 million, with $151 million cash flow from operations on the year. This one is just packed with details, so if you're following Verano, I'd pop over to New Cannabis Ventures for the full dive in. Kushco Holdings is up next as it reports its Q2 revenues for the quarter ending February 28th. In that 3-month stretch, Kushco saw its net revenue grow 9% on the year to $32.9 million, and its gross profit totals $6.4 million, up from a loss of $8.9 million in the same quarter last year. For Q2 of this year, Kushco had a net loss of $5 million, an improvement over the $44.4 million lost last year. Again, New Cannabis Ventures has more here if you need it. We have a good story from up here in my neck of the woods in Maine, where state lawmaker Representative Ann Perry has introduced legislation to remove criminal penalties for being caught with small amounts of all drugs. The proposed bill is in the very first steps in the legislative process, but I think it's important to note, given the building pressure seen nationwide, to do away with traditional drug war laws, which just don't work. Totally be keeping an eye on this one as it develops. Kyle Yeager has an update out of Texas, where we recently covered the large number of cannabis-related bills being worked on this week in the state's legislature. Kyle's check-in here looks at House Bill 1535, a proposed measure to expand the Texas medical marijuana program. The bill was passed by an 11-0 vote just on Wednesday out of the House Public Health Committee. If ultimately made into law, the bill would add cancer, chronic pain, and PTSD for military veterans as qualifying conditions, while also raising the THC cap allowed in medical cannabis products from 0.5% to 5%. This year's regular legislative session ends at the end of May in Texas, so we should see a number of stories between now and then on various cannabis bills. Hopefully one of those future updates will concern this bill being turned into law. And finally for today, Newsweek has a really interesting story up looking at the generally held confusion by Americans over the differences between THC and CBD, with most people thinking they are one and the same. That's kind of important to realize given the state of the legal marijuana industry and the overall growth of the CBD market, which is still not entirely legal exactly, with federal rules and regulations over how it's processed and sold still being worked out. According to a survey of just over 1,000 Americans, 68% said they did not realize there was any kind of functional difference between CBD and THC. If your business touches CBD consumption, or even I would argue THC, this is a storyline you should have a solid handle on. You really need to know how the general public thinks about CBD and THC if you're going to sell it. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again on Tuesday with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shea Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today. Today.
One take, Shea. One take.